Hello, everyone. Welcome to this Americans for Peace Now webinar on Israel's November 1st elections. Today is Wednesday, September 21st, 2022, which means that the elections are exactly 40 days away. I'm Ori Nir with APN here in Washington. Before I introduce our guest, I'd like to remind you that this webinar, like all our webinars, is recorded. The video will be posted on our YouTube channel hopefully sometime later today, and the audio on our podcast, Peacecast. Also, as always, you're encouraged to post questions on our using our Q&A tool, which should be at the bottom of your screen. You can do that anytime, beginning now, and I just ask you that you keep your questions short because I'm going to be reviewing them as we go along in our conversation. I won't have much time to devote to it. So our guest today is Tal Schneider. She's one of the best political correspondents and analysts in Israel. She's a friend, a former colleague. Tal is currently the political correspondent of the Times of Israel. She's been covering Israeli politics for years. She is a frequent commentator on Israeli and American politics on radio and TV stations in Israel. And we're really fortunate to have her with us today. So welcome, Tal. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, Ori. Thanks for having me. Thanks for inviting me.
I'm sure it's a very busy time for you, and I really thank you for taking an hour out of your busy schedule covering the elections. So as I said, we're exactly 40 days before the general elections in Israel. This is for the fifth time in 4 years, am I right? Yeah.
less than 4 years.
Less than 4 years. Wow.
Yeah.
So in our conversation today, Tal, what I'd like to do is to ask you to describe and analyze the political scene in Israel, but also I'd love it if you could zoom out from time to time and make some broader observations about trends in Israeli society, in Israeli politics, and how they are reflected in the current political dynamics. I'd like to ask you to start by, if you could, by depicting the nature of the political competition in Israel today as we approach the elections, because I think that many Americans fail to really comprehend it. What I mean by that is that Americans tend to view election campaigns as a kind of a binary competition between two people, two parties, blue versus red, and so on and so forth. In Israel, it's different, and I think most Americans who are interested in Israel understand that the game in Israel is played between blocks. Now, we've been conditioned in the past to perceive the blocks as right versus left. Today, it's different. So maybe you could talk a little bit about the nature of those blocks and what is the objective of each one of them.
Okay, lots of questions. Definitely, Israel is a major political crisis. It's I can't even start to explain how big the crisis is here. 5 elections in 3.5 years. This is, not natural, not normal, not logical, and very unfortunate. I have to tell you, Uri, I think the Israeli public doesn't care about the election anymore, doesn't have interest. Especially we are having the election in November 1st, which is probably a week and a half after the high holidays, after the second Sukkot holiday, which means that the Israeli are now, as of this Sunday, will go into a month of relaxation, vacation, lots of family dinners. Nobody is listening to the news. This is traditionally during the high holidays, the news are not, a big thing. And definitely with those politicians just repeating themselves with the same messages over and over again, nobody really cares. So I don't know how the turnout is going to be, because we saw a high voter turnout in Israel, even in dire situations. Having said that, the voter turnout can go down. I sense a lot of indifference. If you look at the newscast in Israel, the political items, the election items might be like 40 minutes after the newscast began, or page 17 in the print, or not on the top of the homepage, and so on. So we have lots of other issues, and as per your, what's going on with this election is just, as I said, the sides in Israel are, divided by half. We definitely don't have the two-party system. Israel goes by the British system. For those of you, all of you probably know, Israel used to be a British colony before the country was set up, and that's all of the constitutional laws and all of the procedural laws and the election laws and so on are based on the British system, which is more than two-party system. Even though in Great Britain they still have the two-party system, as a major rule. Here, with so many groups in the society, anyone can set up a party. The threshold is quite high. It's 3.25, 3.25% of the voter base, which means you need at least 4 MKs in order to cross the threshold. This rule entered Israel's semi-constitution back in 2015. 15 was the first time that it was used. So this is probably, it's going to be the 7th, I think, election cycle that we are, maybe 7th or 6th, that with the highest, with the higher threshold. This threshold, instead of, people, when they enacted the threshold, they were hoping that Israel society will go by, 2 big parties. Instead, we have huge amount of 10 people parties, 10 people, 13 people, 9 people, 14 people. So basically around so many parties. I think the outgoing Knesset, the 24th Knesset, had unprecedented number of 13 parties. When you have 120 seats, the average, you understand the picture. Obviously, not all of the parties are so small. The Likud is still the biggest party. It's been the ruling party for many years, for the last 40 years, other than months here, months there. And the last year, most of the time, the Likud has been in power. And they had, in the outgoing Knesset, they have 29 seats. Actually, they won 30, but it went down to 29. According to predictions at the moment, they will remain the biggest party. Benjamin Netanyahu is the most popular politician here still, with a huge and very reliable, or very, loyal voter base. But he's unable, in Israel, it's not enough to be the most, the leading politician, the most popular politician with the biggest number of seats in the Knesset. You also need to be able to form a government based on 61, at least 61 seats, because 120 divided by 2, 61. You need at least 61. Neither of the sides get 61. This is what's going on here in the last 3.5 years. First election, Netanyahu got 60. He was short in 1 seat. That is April 2019. Second election, he gained 55. Third election, he gained 58. Fourth election, he gained 59. So, between 55 to 60, this is your best polling data. I mean, people are, they're trying to look into the polling, and I keep telling them, why do you need polling? You have 4 election cycles in which the right side got between 55 to 60. So obviously from 60 to 61, it doesn't seem such a huge step. It can be done. But let me tell you this, even if he gets 61 and he forms a government based on 61 seats, based on recent years, 61 doesn't, you're unable, I'm sorry, you're unable to maintain a coalition. We saw that last year with the 61 government of Naftali Bennett and Yair Lapid, but Netanyahu also had 61 back in 2015, and it was unsustainable. The 61 government was in power for a year only, after which Netanyahu had to pay big time to Avigdor Lieberman to jump in and enlarge his government. But we all know that 61 is unsustainable. Even if Netanyahu wins 61, I don't presume that he will be able to keep it more than 1 year.
So the blocks today, the two blocks are basically the Netanyahu block and the anti-Netanyahu block. That's right. In other words, the block that tries to block Netanyahu from the prime ministership is not united around any kind of ideology. It's a collection of parties that are actually range from right to left. Correct?
Yes and no. I don't think it's they don't have ideology. Definitely, they're coming from both right and left, but the main concept is keeping Israel rule of law, keeping Israel's basic principles of freedom of the press, of independent judicial system, of democratic values. I mean, you are in the United States. This may sound very familiar to you when you have people that are coming from the some parts of the Republican Party and some parts of the Democratic Party. They have the same vision as per what constitutes a proper government and what is just on the border or out of the question. Now, Netanyahu has proven in the last couple of years where he was in power that he's willing to cross lines that never were crossed before, such as ignoring the Attorney General rule and appointing a justice minister on a whim for a couple of hours, such as attacking severely the courts and the justices on account of his own criminal trial. And maybe one of the worst things that happened here is that we didn't have a budget for almost 2.5, almost 3 years. So that's what you call a lockdown, right? When you don't pass a budget. But I don't know how far did the United States go for lockdowns. Here it never happened before. I mean, we never had any kind of non-budget more than maybe 3 months in which they negotiate and then they pass a budget. So we just didn't have a budget at all. And that was devastating to the country. And I can give an example. One of the things, for example, is that Israel applied to the United States to purchase airplanes that it can do, that can be, how do you say that? לתדלק באוויר.
That can be refueled in midair, yeah.
Exactly. And Israel actually, wrote a contract with the Americans' defense and industries to buy, I think, eight of those. And since the Congress was waiting for a budgetal approval from Israel, and the budgetal approval never made it because we didn't have any budget, the entire deal was postponed. And I don't have to explain to you why people here need, or why the Israeli military need the refueling, the airplanes that refuel in air. You all know the situation. So
Iran, in other words.
Yeah, so that was purchased just like a month ago on Benny Gantz's visit to the United States. The deal was put back on the table and completed. Obviously, it was made possible due to the fact that this government, the outgoing government, actually passed the budget after almost 2.5, 3 years without a budget. So those things, I mean, not passing a budget, that goes to the core system of a democratic state, because when you don't pass a budget, the government uses the previous budget, but you don't have the parliament, the Israeli Knesset, oversighting and overlooking on the budget. So the government can do with former money whatever they want to do without any oversight. This goes, right into the heart of the system when you don't have the Knesset committee doing inquiries and oversight on the budget. It's so when you ask me, people who are on the side of Rak lo Bibi, this is just not Bibi, are they? This is the only ideology they have is objecting Bibi? No, it's not just objecting Bibi. It's objecting the fact that the country needs to be run on democratic value, and therefore they can be parties from the right wing and the left wing who also think that the country cannot be organized and ran by just a one-person show.
Okay, so let's now, if you don't mind, let's try to take stock of where we are with the various segments of the electorate or the parties that are running. We'll go from left to right, but we'll talk also about the ultra-Orthodox and the Arab parties. So left, right, ultra-Orthodox, and Arab. I'm starting with the left because I'm assuming that most of our viewers would be most interested in that. The state of the left. So the traditional left that we have.
You don't count the Arabs in the left?
No, I don't think so. There are different. I think that there are different electorate because some of the Arab parties that are running are actually right wing or conservative, I should say, in their approach. So let's talk about the Zionist left, the Jewish left, if we want to call it that.
Okay, we have two parties out there, the Meretz and Labor, both very old parties, well known, both run by women at the moment. The former chairman of Meretz, who is the health minister, Nitzan Horowitz, stepped down. So Meretz now went back to its former leader, Ava Galon. She's very popular within the left. She's very viable. She's well known. She's a big figure in Israel. She's back into business, being again the chairwoman. Labor is chaired by Maariv Michaeli. She's been in the Knesset for more than 10 years or about 10 years. Also very prominent figure, very feminist, both of them feminists. Maariv was a very known anchor on TV and a journalist, and she's a very serious politician. She's trying to bring Labor back to its big days, but I don't think she's going to be able to get more than 5 and 6 seats. Both parties will probably get together between 11 to 13 seats together. A very small part of the Knesset, but basically more of a traditional liberal, secular liberal. If you're looking for green agenda, social agenda, reform movement is being represented at the reform movement. Gilad Karib is in Labor.
Yeah.
Yaya Fink, also a religious guy coming from the left, is it's like some people that are religious and want to be in the left, they have the representative there.
So recently, Yair Lapid, the prime minister, tried to bring them together and have them run together. Why did he try that, and why did he fail? And why did he fail? Why did they opt to not do that?
Yeah, he was trying to do it for his own good. Actually, when they are together, they came out. In politics, 3 plus 3 doesn't equal 6. 3 plus 3 equal 5 or 4. So he was trying to get them together. But actually, since we have so much experience in the last couple of years, every time they were united, they dropped in the numbers. When they ran apart, they actually managed to get 6 and 7 seats. So there was no logic in that. He was trying to do it, but because he wanted more and more seats for himself.
But according to recent polls, neither Labor nor Meretz seem in danger of not passing the threshold, right?
It's always a danger, actually, because the threshold is so high, as I said earlier. I think at the end, and coming to an end of the campaign, they will both parties will do what we call a Gewalt campaign, which is crying out loud. We are in a version of distinction, save us, and so on. And many people in Israel these days do not vote based on their values, but they vote strategically, which means they will choose at the last day who to vote for according to who is closer to losing the party. So if Labor is down to 4 on the last poll before election, people would run, and they may dump Yesh Atid and say, I'll put my vote here because this is basically, it's the block. So if you're helping labor, you're actually helping Lapid. So if you prefer Lapid, you can assist Lapid by making sure labor doesn't lose it, and so on. So this is the strategic vote. It's a common phenomenon after 4 election cycle coming into the 5th.
Let's turn right now and look at what I think is one of the most significant phenomena of this election campaign. So while Likud is more or less maintaining its power, the alliance between the religious Zionism party headed by Bezalel Smotrich and the Kahanist Jewish Power Party that's headed by Itamar Ben-Gvir, that alliance is likely to come out as the 3rd largest party in the Knesset, after Yair Lapid's Yesh Atid and of course Likud, and that party, that extreme right-wing party, is now Likud's closest natural ally. So many people are asking me, how did this happen? How did the Kahana ideology become so, I don't know if mainstream is the right word, but so accepted in Israeli society?
Well, it's been in the process for a couple of years. Netanyahu actually worked very hard in one of the last election, I think the 3rd or the 4th, to enter Ben-Gvir. He was the one who negotiated the agreement between religious Zionism and Otzma Yehudit. Otzma Yehudit is Jewish power. Netanyahu was not just calling them to sit together, he actually negotiated between them. He actually offered them a relief by taking into his list one of their party members. So it's actually, he offered to them, if you will get, together, I will help you by installing one of your people in my list. So he actually gave them a present of one seat. And he also, there is an agreement, it's on paper, the agreement is published to the public in the website of the election committee, in which Netanyahu promised to Ben-Gvir to be the next chairman of the judicial committee in the Knesset. This is 4th election. In the 5th election, we are talking now about a promise to be a minister. So when you ask me how did this came along, it came along because if you look at the Likud back in the 80s or back in the 90s, the Likud was opposing Kahana. And every time the leader of Kahana, Meir Kahana, went up to the podium to make a speech, all of the Likud members, including Prime Minister, left the plenum.
Yeah, I remember that.
Now in 2022, the Likud is having a full force campaign saying how Ben-Gvir is a nice person, how he changed over the years. And Ben-Gvir himself is going from a high school to high school or other places and telling people, I have changed. When I was making threats against Rabin, I wasn't a teenager. I'm not doing this anymore. This was wrong. He's doing like a full apologizing campaign. I don't buy it. Let me tell you just, even Israeli kibbutz these days is hosting Ben-Gvir kibbutz, some of the kibbutzes, not all of them, but some of them are hosting Ben-Gvir for a political panel or, like a Sunday show where you talk, you discuss the situation. So he's invited, he's like invited to speak at the kibbutzim. Unbelievable. And just one more thing, if you're thinking to yourself, maybe Ben-Gvir has changed and he's not the person that he used to be. If any of you don't know who Ben-Gvir is, I just urge you to Google Ben-Gvir and the Times of Israel. The Times of Israel has put very good and detailed piece about Ben-Gvir about 2 years ago. It's still the same. It's not changed. It was written by my colleague Chaviv Retig, a very good piece. Just Google Ben-Gvir, Times of Israel, Chaviv, and it will come up. But just to say this, Ben-Gvir was having in his household, in his living room, a photo, like I have a photo here. I don't know if you can see those photos. He had a photo of Baruch Goldstein, the doctor who did the massacre in 1994, killing about 30 worshippers, Muslim worshippers in the Ma'arat HaMachpelah, in
the
the
Cave of the Patriarchs in Hebron.
exactly. The person who committed this crime and was then killed himself was the physician of the Jewish settlement in Hebron. He was a friend of the Ben Gvir family. So Ben Gvir put a photo of him in his living room to educate his kids in light of Goldstein heritage. And when a TV camera went into this house and saw this, the camera people were like, what, you have a photo of Ben Gvir in your living room? And Ben Gvir said, yes, he was a really fine doctor, really fine physician, and he saved a lot of life before he massacred 30 of them. So there was a outrage, Ben Gvir claims he's changed, he never changed, and so on. So Ben Gvir said, okay, I am taking the image down. And then he made a whole scene. I mean, he's very sophisticated. Yeah. He brought the cameras back into his house. He made a whole scene about, I took the photo down. I don't educate my kids anymore in the light of Dr. Goldstein and so on. But then just like a month ago, Ben Gvir's wife was on Israel's radio and she's been asked, you took Dr. Goldstein photo off. What other photos do you have in your house? And she said, oh, we still have the photo of Kahana in our living room. And this is to the, so they have the photo. I mean, if you don't know, Kahana is listed. Kahana is on the name of Meir Kahana. He was assassinated many years ago, but Kahana Chai, that's his organization, association, is still listed in the terror list organizations under the United States Department of State till this day. And one of the Kahana supporter, which is a very good friend of Ben Gvir, and someone, they were running a party together, Michael Ben-Ari, he's actually not allowed to enter the United States till this day. Is a former MK himself, is not allowed, is blocked from entering the United States because is in the list of terror organization participants. So this is Ben Gvir, and he claims that he has changed and so on. And Netanyahu is running this campaign saying how nice Ben Gvir is these days. And if Netanyahu will win, Ben Gvir will probably be the Minister of Homeland Security. That's what his goal is.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit about the Orthodox parties. They're very solidly in Netanyahu's camp, very loyal to him. Anything interesting that has changed there in this election campaign? If not, we can go on.
There were slight hints that at least one of them, Gafni, who is the chairman of Degel Torah, it's the Lithuanian Jews. There were some hints that he may change sides after the election. I don't know.
Okay. The Arab votes, there we have some dramatic developments. So let's talk a little bit about them and a little bit about how they might impact the broader picture.
Yeah, Arab votes is comprised of 4 different parties to begin with. One is a very religious one is a very nationalist. They want to have one state solution. Another one is very social, used to be social democratic workers, that's Hadash. And another one was just like a personal party of Dr. Ahmed Tibi, another physician. When they ran in the last 4 years or 3.5 years, when they ran apart, the numbers went down. Whenever they joined forces, numbers went up. Last election, Ram, which is the Islamic movement, the religious party, they split all together for a groundbreaking event in Israel's history, in Israel politics, headed by Mansour Abbas. They broke from the rest of them, and they said, we are breaking in order to become a member of Israel's next government. Was, again, an unprecedented move, very brave on behalf of Mansour Abbas. They did it. They went into government. Now, the other 3 parts remained very confused, and at least some of them decided that they should go for that also. maybe not embracing Israel coalition and really entering into the coalition like Mansour Abbas did, but playing a bigger role in, you can play, from the opposition, you can play a role in votes, in recommendations, and so on. They decided that they will break from the party that is the nationalist one, the one that wants one state solution. That's Balad. Balad is the most extreme to the we call it to the left because it's it's on the other side. It's the most extreme. Some of its former members are, one of them at least is sitting in the Israeli jail. Another one escaped Israel a couple of years ago and is sitting now in Qatar, both for espionage indictments. This party is on the verge of being delegitimate. Nobody in Israel really cooperating with them. They will probably not cross the threshold. They have like 40,000 supporters, so that means that they cannot enter the next Knesset if they're on their own, unless there will be a huge vote towards them, which I don't think will happen. The problem with the Arab voters turnout, with the Arab voters, is the turnout. The general turnout is 70%. The Arab voter turnout can be between 40 to 50. It went up once to 65 when all of the Joint Arab List was together. When they were separated, it went down. According to all pollsters, this election, we expect a very low voter turnout in the Arab society for many reasons. I can start and talk about them, but I'm not an Arab citizen, so I don't want on behalf of them. But basically, it's a lot of disappointment from from the first time that Arab Party was part of the government. Instead, they're not, they did not become so happy about it. So if the voter turnout of the Arab society will be very low, there is a concern that at least, Balad, as I said, probably will not cross the threshold. So you lose 40,000 votes. When you lose 40,000 votes, the balance of power shift, because when you lose on one side 40,000 votes, it means the other side of the map, which means the Likud, gains more proportional power. And that means that the division of the seats will give the other side at least one more seat. So right now you actually see in the polls, the Likud has come up from 59 to 60 based on that specific event. Also, I mean, Ram and Hadash, both the two other, both face the same problem. As I said, with respect to the labor and merits, they all face the same problem. They can not cross the threshold if there isn't enough voters. And definitely, if another party on that side will not cross the threshold, then Netanyahu is definitely the next prime minister without,
Huh. Okay, so we talked about the left, the right, the ultra-Orthodox, the Arabs. We didn't talk about the center. I think it may be worthwhile to say a few words about, I think there are two parties that can be considered center, and those are Lapid's party, Yesh Atid, and Gantz and Saar's party. So maybe just a few words. I think that Yesh Atid particularly is interesting because it has managed to not only maintain, but even increase its power over time. So maybe just a few words about those two parties, how they're faring.
Right. Lapid is now, if you look at the poll, is on 24 seats. That's higher than what he has in the outgoing Knesset. He has 17. I have to tell you, it's very risky to trust those polls. I think many times, parties in the center or in the left center had higher numbers, and when it came to election day, it dropped. So I'm not sure, but definitely if Lapid is able to form a government with 61 seats, he will be the next prime minister. Next to him, you have Benny Gantz, former chief of the IDF. They sat together in one party back in the first and second and third election. The party's name was Blue and White. They ran together, but then COVID came in. Netanyahu made a big, huge speech about how this is a time of risk and time of you know, well, I don't have to tell you what was going on back in March 2020 around the world. Here, the same. Netanyahu made a huge outreach saying, to Benny Gantz and Yair Lapid, you have to join me into government. Lapid refused and said, I will support you from the outside. Every decision you're going to make on close downs and so on, I will support it as an opposition. Benny Gantz on the other side decided that the country cannot go to a fourth election and enter the government, only to be cheated on, deceived, and they signed a coalition agreement, which Netanyahu broke immediately thereafter, like within weeks. And this government, which was between the third and fourth election, this government actually broke down very fast. Today, people were talking to Netanyahu. He's regretting this. He shouldn't have cheated him, and so on. But this is history by now. After that breakdown, we had the fourth election. I'm telling this entire tale because this day, when you ask Benny Gantz, will you step in to help Netanyahu? He says, no, I've learned my lesson. The problem is that you're going to have a huge public in Israel calling Gantz maybe to enter an agreement with Netanyahu, because they would come up and say it's either Benny Gantz or Ben Gvir. So if the Likud wants to have a government without Ben Gvir, the extremist, I didn't even mention, back in that party, you do have people who are against LGBT, people who are against, really against, like extremely against, people who are against women's rights. They want to stop women service in the military. It's kind of suggestions like that. I'm sure they're looking into the abortion issue as well, if they can do it. So people will come up to Benny Gantz and say, save the country. Let Bibi be the prime minister, as long as you're the defense minister and as long as Ben Gvir is staying out. And I suppose the voters should ask themselves, right with Benny Gantz in the same party, he has one of the biggest opponent of Netanyahu, which is Gideon Sa'ar, is now the justice minister. Gideon Sa'ar keeps on saying, no, never, we will not sit with him. It's a big question if you trust him or not.
So let's now think about the day after. It's not, I'm saying the day after, but it never is the day after. It takes months in Israel. If Netanyahu, in fact, manages to form a coalition, and particularly if he forms it with an extreme right-wing party and the Orthodox parties, first of all, how high on his order of priorities is going to be passing laws that would help him, particularly personally, in his legal fight, and how up high in the priorities are other laws or the other parts of the agenda that relates to the legal system, as you pointed out earlier?
Well, listen, obviously, we already know, because he already made a try, not just one. He worked in several fronts, so I suppose it's going to be very high on his list. I don't know to tell you in what way, but for example, just at the end of this Knesset, one of the people from the Likud, not even from the very right, far alt-right and so on, from the Likud, his name is Amsalem, MK David Amsalem, a member of the Knesset. He put forward a bill in this June or July to change the nomination of Supreme Court judges such that the government will appoint them. This is, completely, the system here is different from the American system, right? The judges are not political. This is, Hungary textbook. Have the government appoint Supreme Court judges. The bill was put forward by someone from the Likud, and Netanyahu actually took the step to enter the plenum and vote for that bill. He voted for that. He voted for the change of election of judges to be appointed by Israel's government. This is unheard of. And I mean, I don't know if they will put a bill like that again. For the criminal trial that already started and is being heard every day now, 3 days a week for more than a year now, I think that he cannot really stop it. I mean, how can you stop a trial like that? You can, what do? You cancel the judicial system in Israel. I mean, I'm laughing when I'm saying it. I don't know. I don't see, but definitely they will try to maybe change the identity of the attorney general. So again, in Israel, you cannot just dismiss the attorney general. We don't have a change of professionals at those jobs when a government replaces itself. The attorney general of the state of Israel is a professional appointee. It's never, ever in the history of Israel, any of them was discharged. But Netanyahu's people, the MKs from his party, are talking openly about discharging her and replacing her with someone to their convenience. This is like a revolution in Israel's, concepts. It's not. It's undone. It's like. So I mean, when Netanyahu is asked, "Will you replace the attorney general?" he says, "No, of course I will not do such a thing." That this is this week. I mean, he issued a statement saying, "Replacing the attorney general is out of the question. It's not." And I urge Likud MPs to stop saying it. I mean, would you trust him on that? I don't know.
What about
they have many others ideas. They have many other ideas. So they basically, I don't think they will be able to stop the trial, but they do have, range of other ideas on how to deal. And let me just say this: judicial system in Israel definitely need a reform. It's not like everything is perfect. They need to change some things. It's from left to right, people are saying they need a reform. Specifically when they have matzar minali, how do you call that?
Administrative detention, yeah.
Administrative detention, they need to change some things, but election process of judges is actually considered in Israel a very good one. So I don't think they need to touch on that.
So since we talked about Netanyahu, here's a quick question. I see the polls often. Often the question that's asked in the polls is, who do you feel is the most qualified to be Israel's prime minister? And Netanyahu scores consistently somewhere between, I'd say, 36, 38, and 40 something, sometimes as high as 45. And it hasn't really gone down significantly after he was indicted. How do you explain it?
And Lapid actually numbers went up to 24, 25, 26, something like that. So Lapid was having probably 11 or 12 back in the past. Bennett, when he was serving as a prime minister, his number did not go up at all. He was very unpopular prime minister. How do I explain that? I think that Israel's public, I think Netanyahu is very popular. The number of his support for the job as a prime minister relates to the number of the mandates, the seats that he gets in polls, which is around 30. And he's very popular in Israel. You have a lot of people who still like him. Many people in Israel don't think that being under trial or even a suspect in bribery, they think it's, I'm saying this with dismay, but they don't think it's something bad. If they hear on the news day and night that the prime minister or the former prime minister is lying and is deceiving, they say to themselves, yeah, it's good. I want a prime minister who can be a liar because I want him to cheat Slovenia, I want him to cheat the US president and so on. So, I mean, they think, it's sad to say, but they appreciate those characteristics in him. He's very charismatic. I don't have to tell you that. He's been very charismatic. And also, Uri, it's also important to note some of the things that he did were very, very good. We're talking about the Abraham Accords. He's been in power for 12 years. Israel economy is in a fine situation. Not everything is good. Obviously, we have some problems with the housing crisis and consumer goods, and it's very expensive here. But the job market is good. the country has a reserve from on the budget. We are not in depression in any way, and export is unbelievably high. So, I mean, you can criticize Netanyahu, but, some of the things were actually very good.
I'd like to take a few of the questions that we have posted. I've already related to some of them, but a question that we have asking if there's any younger potential leader, in your opinion, who may be capable of unifying the country around the idea of a two-state solution. What do you think?
What do you mean?
Is there any charismatic young leader that you see who is left of center? Basically, I'd say that's the.
Well, listen, Netanyahu is definitely the most charismatic one, and you can't really compare anyone to him because he is by far the most charismatic figure. And when you try to put people after Netanyahu, obviously he's 73, I think. When you try to look on the day following Netanyahu, and will you have Lapid and maybe someone from the Likud and other people, they will all compete each other on on more equal terms. Right now, when they have to compete with him, it's almost impossible. So when you ask me about is any of them impressive, or I don't think so, because we are so used to him, we compare everything to him. So at the moment, I don't see them as being, I'm fine with any of them, of course. I'd rather have a non-charismatic prime minister, but, more loyal to the country than having someone who is very, very charismatic, but is only loyal to himself. So, but I don't think, the next generation of leaders will definitely have to confront a situation where, it's different. It's not all about the speeches and so on.
Okay, we have a question here asking if there are any Arab members of the lists of labor and merits, and I think the answer is yes. But I want to broaden the question a little bit and talk about, the buzz on the left in the past few election campaigns was joint Jewish-Arab work, collaboration, and harnessing the energy that was there toward electoral political objectives. Do you see any of that actually being translated into Knesset election campaigns?
Meretz traditionally had at least one seat out of 6 or 7 coming from the Arab community. They had Isawi Frij, who is still a minister, a Muslim coming from Kfar Qasim. It's in the middle of the country, one of the good cities. He stepped down. He decided to leave the political arena at the moment, even though he was very popular. There is a Druze MK, Ali Salalha, who was a manager of high school in Kfar Jat. And the high school that he managed is listed on the top. When you have rating of high school around Israel, I know you have the rating of high schools around the United States, right? So in Israel, it's a smaller country. It's like one state of, it's like just New Jersey here, okay? So you have a listing of all the high schools, and Kfar Jat, Druze high school under Ali Salalha, was rated number 1, the best high school in Israel. This is obviously on performance, not just what people like, but about performance of the students. Yeah. So it's based on the real numbers. So he's coming with success to the Knesset. He was already an MK, and he will probably be an MK in the next Knesset. In labor, I think you have someone in the list, but not immediately. So labor actually used to have a big voter base in the Arab society back in the 90s. It's gone. They don't have Arab voters anymore. You see it everywhere. I mean, if you check the real results, they lost their Arab base. I mean, labor today, it's a small party. So maybe I don't know if they even put the resources to bring on Arab voters. We don't have any Arab in Yesh Atid, unfortunately. I think Benny Gantz has Druze in his list in spots that can enter the Knesset. Likud actually deteriorated their Arab, again, only Druze, MK, to number 44, which means that not even there, which means he will not enter the Knesset. So that's basically, but it's all mixed. I mean, if you go around the country, you do have Arabs, Muslims, or Druze or whatever that vote for Likud. You have Arabs that vote for, even the Ultra-Orthodox Party of Shas has Arab voters. And the Arab, I mean, Mansour Abbas actually made huge change in the way people, see things. He's very, if you never heard of him or didn't listen to him, it's just, a very pleasant ride to listen to him. He's very moderate. He's also, as I said earlier, the only two doctors in the Knesset. I'm sorry, it's about doctors today, but the only two doctors in Israel's Knesset are Arabs. One is Mansour Abbas, who is a dentist, actually. And the other one is Ahmed Tibi, who is
Gynecologist.
Okay, exactly.
Yeah.
I wanted to say OBGYN. Is that a right word?
Yes, OBGYN. The
was-
reason I know it is that, years ago when I used to cover Palestinian affairs, and he was working with Yasser Arafat at the time. He had a clinic in East Jerusalem, and I'd go to meet him there. I'd knock on the door. He would finish his business with a woman who was sitting there. I, of course, didn't see it, with the stirrups and everything. So I would interview him at his clinic.
He actually delivered many babies in Israel. So he has thousands of babies. We had a career before. So that's the only two doctors at the moment. They're Arabs. It's not accidental. If you look at Israel's Arab society, it's huge on the medical profession. All the pharmaceutical doctors, nurses, technicians, the entire medical business. I mean, not entire, but the huge chunk. I mean, we all saw that during COVID. Every second person you met was an Arab, either nurse or assistant or a caregiver and so on. So it's also reflected in the Knesset. Basically, also you can say about the Arabs, Israel society, it's very high educated. Lots of people in poverty, but with huge percentage of academics, even within the poverty, huge percentage of academics suffering in unbelievable way from crime rate in Arab society. It's a huge deal here in Israel at the moment. We have a daily count, and we are, government programs about the Arab society. Again, this is to be differentiated from the Arab population of the West Bank. Do not mix it. You have the Arab population of the West Bank, probably around 2.5 million. And then you have the Arab society, Arab citizens of Israel, 21%, which means around 2 million, I think. They mostly Muslims, 19% Muslims, and then 2% are Christian, Druze, Bedouin, and Cherkess, and other kind of little groups, but most of them Muslims, as I said. So when we talk about the Arab society of Israel, it's basically Muslims, big cities and so on.
I saw a poll, just thought it was interesting because you mentioned the issue of the crime rate there. A poll in which Arab citizens of Israel, Arab voters, were asked what is the main issue that they think the next government should tackle. And 47% said the crime in Arab society. Only 11%, by the way, said that it should be the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. If we're talking about Israeli-Palestinian conflict, I just want to ask you, because I think it's interesting. It's something that is related to what has been happening in the West Bank in the last few days. We see a real rise in violence, both anti-Israeli violence and intra-Palestinian violence there. If there is a major outbreak of violence right before the elections, how do you see that impacting the election result, the voting patterns?
Usually it works for the right wing. People are, when they get, the violent times, they just, specifically with Yair Lapid, and now is going to speak tomorrow at the UN. and his speech is 10 a.m. your time, 5 p.m. Israel's time. And according to what we've heard, he's going to say that he believes in the two-state solution, which is something that former Prime Minister did not say for many years. I think Netanyahu mentioned that only once in 2009 in the Bar Ilan speech after being under pressure from Obama to do it, and not since then. So when Israel's Prime Minister chooses to talk about two-state solution and it's going to bring it up in the UN, then definitely it's going to be part of the campaign here. So you do see Lapid already being attacked from many people. I think that the fact that this is, when I say two-state solution to you, it sounds very, how do you say that? Barur me'elav, what's the big deal?
Obvious, yeah, it's an obvious thing.
Should have been obvious to at least, I don't know. But I think maybe he's doing it in order to differentiate himself from Benny Gantz, to just, let people know who he is. Because Yair Lapid has never been a lefty. He's never been like a real lefty. He presented himself as center-right, and he grew up in a house of center-right or even right-wing. So it's interesting that he chooses to emphasize that. And I don't think a statement like that by itself will get any uprise in the West Bank, but it will definitely have a lot of reactions here. I mean, most of the campaigns actually ignore the Palestinian issue, and it's just interesting that he chooses to bring it on.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that there are any kind of electoral considerations that would make him mention that?
Yeah, I'm sure.
You think so? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because I think he wanted to make sure that he's not the same as Gantz. He wanted to make himself look, getting a good press from certain parts of the Israeli press for that statement and so on. And it's, Mark Melman from D.C. is his advisor and his pollster. So I'm pretty sure that question was tested before being announced.
Yeah. Good, Tal. We are approaching the end of our hour. I don't know if there's anything that you want to say that we haven't touched upon. If you want to take the risk and try to predict, go ahead and be my guest.
The only thing I think is that we are still in a deadlock, and I don't see how this election is going to solve it.
Yeah. I think that's safe to say. I want to thank you very much. I want to thank everyone who joined us. I want to wish everyone Shana Tova, Happy New Year. And hopefully the new year will be a more peaceful, at least more peaceful year. Shnat Shalom. So thank you very much.
Sure, thank you.